So, Frozen 2 is out, guys, and holy crap, look at all that money. Prepare yourself, my fellow adults, no children because COPPA, obviously, but Frozen 3 through 10 are on their way. So why am I claiming that Frozen 2 is a fractured movie that's stitched together? In short, because it is. Not to say the movie is bad, but it's just not as cohesive as some of its predecessors were, and it's going to be a difficult one to talk about because I can't really point to a thing saying like, oh, this, and this were definitely horrible. But I can say the audience did most of the heavy lifting, especially with putting the story beats together and the emotional beats together, instead of the movie being a cohesive whole for us to indulge in. Big spoiler alert right now, because I will have to get into the plot details, the music details, and everything in between to illustrate my point. So if you haven't watched the movie yet and you still plan to, please go ahead and do that before I spoil your Disney princess version of Endgame. If it wasn't already painfully obvious, Disney knows what they're doing. As I'm sure many of the Disney executives have already done, I also took a look at the animated vault that they have of their Disney classics. And it becomes pretty apparent which ones have withstood the test of time and which ones fell into a forgotten well. If you also look at the live action remakes, you can also tell which movies Disney thinks themselves are their prize-winning trophies. It looks like they're trying really hard to cash in on the mega hits before people wise up to the fact that the animation version is just the superior one. Maybe I'm giving people a little too much credit, because even if it looks like the consensus is that people don't like it that well, they will show up to see it and get a few puffs of nostalgia out of it at the very least. But getting back to the point. What do these movies all have in common? The music. Iconic music is so powerful, it sometimes overtakes the movies that it came from. Star Wars, case in point. Back in high school, I took this music theory class in which one of the tests we had was to name some of the most iconic music of the decade, and he would play a 5-second snippet of it on his CD player. Within basically the first 2 seconds, everyone knows Star Wars immediately. Even if people have never watched the movie before, they know the music and they know that it belongs to Star Wars. It really is just that powerful. Then we take a look at one of Disney's most influential periods in time, which was the Disney Renaissance. Here we have The Little Mermaid, Rescuers Down Under, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King, Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Mulan, and Tarzan, according to Wikipedia. 80% of these movies had sweeping musical scores in, and the other two that didn't are probably the ones you don't remember as well. Almost everyone can name a song from one of these movies at the very least, like Part of Your World, A Friend Like Me, Circle of Life, I'll Make a Man Out of You, the list goes on. And even if the movie wasn't as well received as the other ones were, you can probably still name the titular song of that movie. Tarzan itself kind of marked the turning point of Disney, where they started to record songs separately and include them in the movie as part of a montage bit instead of having the characters actually sing them. Like, I really like the movies Atlantis and Brother Bear, but you would be hard pressed to find someone who actually has seen the film. Was it because they didn't have the great musical numbers like the other movies in the Disney Renaissance did? Could very well be the case. Okay, but what does that have to do with Frozen 2 being a broken movie? I'm getting to that, so hold on to your gorgeous looking water horses. Disney knows that if they want to make a movie to have a lasting impact and make it into the classics section of their library, they know that their music has to be on point. Like top tier level shit. The Princess and the Frog and Tangled were two examples of prioritizing story over song. And as a story person, I was really happy to see that they were trying to marry the two ingredients that made the Disney Renaissance such a powerful force that it was. But despite the fact that they were well received, they didn't quite have the same impact that Frozen did. I had this thought ever since I watched Frozen 1, but I think it became way more apparent with Frozen 2. There are a bunch of reviews out there right now claiming that Frozen 2 doesn't have a song as impactful as Let It Go, but I just have to disagree. In fact, I think they have two. Into the Unknown and Show Yourself. Frozen 2 is still relatively new, and Let It Go didn't really get the loop on radios and households until the momentum really took hold a month later. If you think about it, Show Yourself is Let It Go, but better. Yeah, I said it, come at me, bro. Both songs are about Elsa coming to this realization that she is who she is and to embrace it, heart and soul. The only difference is that Disney just couldn't release the animated version of Show Yourself because it has major spoilers. In contrast, Let It Go had no spoilers whatsoever. This top comment here. This be hitting different in the cinema. 100% true. There's just so much more emotion and feeling in Show Yourself that I really have to rank it higher than Let It Go. Just give it time, guys. I think with time, the radios and the little children in the households trying to hit those high notes will change your minds in a month or so. Okay, so is this now a Show Yourself circle jerk? Yes. That song is great, so you can staffoo. Disney took 6 years to make Frozen 2, and while I'm sure a lot of those years were dedicated to storyboarding, I think most of it came from creating the hit songs they knew this movie had to have. And to me, I think they managed to up their Let It Go game with Into the Unknown and Show Yourself. Disney went really hard on that sequel speak of the audience wanting the same, but more. This could be considered conjecture, but I believe the two songs were absolute musts for the movie. The Olaf song was a must for the children, but the two Elsa songs were the make or break it for Frozen 2. And thus the story needed to be written to accommodate them, similarly to how Let It Go was the centerpiece of Frozen 1 and the movie needed to be rewritten to accommodate that.
And we sent the demo out and everyone went, oh my gosh, that's great. Shoot, we have to rewrite the whole thing.
I went, oh God, I have to rewrite the entire movie again.
Let's take another look at the soundtrack for Frozen 2. All is found. Mother foreshadowing. Okay, no problem. Some things never change. This brings us back to the world of Frozen. Okay, cool, no problem. Always down for the invite. Into the Unknown, Elsa's call to adventure. Okay, cool. So our characters are setting off on their quest and they're all gonna be together. When I'm older, the goofy sidekick song. Works for the children, it's gotta happen. Lost in the Woods, Christophe's atrocity, I'm gonna call it. So Christophe's arc in this entire movie is just him failing to propose. Not a highlight for me, so whatever, but I guess it's placed right here. Show Yourself, the climax. Okay, Elsa finally realizes the truth about her enchanted forest and herself. Her mother's support is behind her and she's truly coming into her own here. The next right thing. Anna continues on. Right, this story is Anna's too. So when the biggest musical hits have to be in place, but they don't quite fit in with the story has to bend so that the music fits what it wants it to say. Yes, I know there was a back and forth going on between the songwriters and the director, but it really feels like they prioritized the songs to be mega hits first and the story beats to mirror that. So if there were some tweaks made, it looks like it would have been made in favor of the songs rather than the story. See, as much as I love Show Yourself, the story didn't really lead up to her big reveal moment as well as it could have. Yes, Elsa just conquered the dark sea water horse thing, but it wasn't like a Simba Mufasa reflection in the clouds moment where Simba remembers who he truly is and goes back to Pride Rock. Believe me, I absolutely love this song, the emotions that Elsa had when she saw her mom, and all the visuals around it. But I can't help but think of how much more powerful it would have been if the story had really went all out to build up to this one moment, which leads to her decision in the end where she decides to part ways with Anna and become Queen of Northuldra and the Enchanted Forest. This is where they get the audience to stitch it together instead of them doing the hard work. Anna always seemed like she seemed to fit to rule Arendelle better than Elsa, so the ending makes sense, right? But it would have done wonders if they had a mini montage in the beginning showcasing Elsa as queen and how out of place she still felt. Because at this point, the kingdom had already accepted her powers by now. They embraced her. So if that's the case, she wouldn't have felt as much of an outcast as she did in the first movie.
And Jennifer Lee and Chris Buck really put a lot of work into making sure we knew Elsa was happy where she was.
I understand the creators wanted to make it seem like Elsa was perfectly content where she was, but if that's the case, the ending doesn't quite mirror that sentiment. By showing us quick glimpses of her not quite owning her queen title and seeing how much more natural Anna was at it than her, it would have primed us very well for the ending where she decided to split ways. Like in Shrek Forever After, if they didn't have that montage in the beginning to show us how disconnected Shrek was becoming with his life, the deal with Rumpelstiltskin, and the ending where he chooses to embrace the life he's always had, just wouldn't have had the punch that it did. Did I just compare Shrek Forever After to Frozen 2? Strange timeline. The story in Frozen 2 just becomes more of a mystery of this voice that calls out to Elsa in the Enchanted Forest. But if that's the case, the end should have come with Show Yourself, where Elsa finds out the voice is her mother's and she is the bridge between two worlds. And honestly, that would have been totally fine. It just would have been an Elsa-centered movie where we got a deep dive into her character. But everything is so very much on the surface level, and we don't really get to know much about her besides that she's an introvert and she's following this voice to find out what it wants. Believe me, introverts have a lot more brewing beneath the surface that we don't outwardly show, and it would have been great to see that. But instead, we need to fit this huge backstory of this evil grandpa, the dam, the Northuldra people, the parent ship, the reenacted death, the four elemental spirits. There's just so much on top of the sisterly bond, the goofy sidekick, and the terrible B-plot of Christophe trying to propose. I just have to add here that Christophe's entire character in Frozen 2 is a travesty compared to what he was in Frozen 1. In Frozen 1, he's actually a real character with his own goals and personality, who we actually got to see fall in love with the girl of his dreams, and it wasn't love at first sight. Here, he's just a guy who just can't get his shit together and has an overdramatic 80s woe is me song. It truly was like they didn't know what to do with him in Frozen 2 because they were so preoccupied with all this other stuff with the forest, the elementals, Elsa's personal quest. Stop it with the side tangents! Okay, I'm sorry. I just had to say it. They did Christophe dirty. He should have 100% had his own song, but not the one that they gave him. I guess in the end, Frozen 2 just didn't seem like it knew where to strike a balance. At its core, what was it actually about? Was it about Elsa, who had fully embraced who she was, even more so than she had in the first movie? Was it about Anna having to learn what to do without her sister by her side? Or was it about the conflict between two tribes of people and the damage it caused to the spirits and the land itself? Yes, it could be everything, but sometimes you have to pick your battles. Highlight the one that's most important and give that the screen time it needs to hit the hardest. Otherwise, you kind of just get a mishmash of a bunch of concepts and not a lot of good execution. In my opinion, Frozen 2 should have been a heavily Elsa-centered movie where Anna and Christophe kind of take on supporting roles, because Frozen 1 was pretty much the opposite of that. I was a little surprised when I watched Frozen 1 because it pretty much featured Anna front and center, even though the marketing was all about Elsa. So it would have been a nice role reversal if in Frozen 2 you got to center way more on Elsa's journey rather than trying to juggle everything at once. What do you mean? Frozen 2 is Elsa's journey. Did you see the Dark Sea stuff? That was all her. Yeah, I get it, but if it was truly her story, Show Yourself should have been the big climax. Instead, we get her randomly frozen, not exactly sure why, unless the grandpa's evil spirit had powers beyond the grave, and Anna finishing the journey by herself, understanding that betrayal from a telepathic ice swirl from miles and miles away, and somehow magically understanding that the dam has to go in order to bring peace and prosperity back to the land. There are probably a number of reasons why Disney did not want to go that route, and my 2 cents is that they wouldn't have this big epic battle type or chase type sequence at the end, or for Anna to sing about carrying on when the sister's not there anymore. But then that goes way back into the core of the story itself. If it's about freeing the Enchanted Forest, then would we really need a song called Show Yourself? Not really. That song is all about Elsa. If the story was about fixing the conflict between the Northuldrans and the Arendellians, then they should have called it Stop Yourselves.
Stop.
All in all, Frozen 2 is probably as good of a movie as you can get with the scattered pieces that you have. Apart from Christophe, the only other thing that I would have personally liked better was if Arendelle got destroyed. At least then it would show that there is consequence to the new generation having to suffer through the mistakes of the past. A very real concept, by the way. But I can see Disney being a little too scared to do that on top of making Elsa and Anna part ways. It just wouldn't have made very much sense if Elsa left her home in such a dire state as that. So one or the other, I guess. But as much as I ragged on this movie, I have to say it was absolutely gorgeous. Really beautiful stuff. I just can't tell you how many things in this movie I found super beautiful. It was ridiculous. I mean, there's the water horse, and just look at its mane. It's absolutely insane. And then obviously the entire Show Yourself sequence looked like it came out of a Northern Lights fever dream. The music was on point, don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. And we got a really interesting way of seeing water in a new light. Like, I can't really tell you another instance where they have the concept of water passing through many states and returning back to form, holding the memories of what its past was. I can't tell you another time I've ever seen that on screen. It's possible that there may have been some allusion to this in something else, but for me, it's the first time. So definitely points for that. So yes, Frozen 2, definitely a stunning movie. Definitely, definitely, definitely. Full of amazing visuals and great songs. A little messy on the story, which is a little bit of a bummer, but hey, in the end, 30 years time from now or whatever time, people are gonna know these songs. Like, they know the Aladdin songs, they know the Little Mermaid songs, they know the Mulan songs. So that's really all Disney needs to keep the legacy of Frozen going, for it to live long past the date it was in theaters.